Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Sexually exploited young people in Saskatoon have a new tool to keep them safe with the I Am Not For Sale app, created by the youth outreach organization EGADS. The organization says it will be a game changer in how they help kids on the street. APTN's Leanne Sanders reports.
EGADS is excited about its new and improved app, which now has features like a Help Me Now button and a violent customers list that shows who kids on the street should watch out for. Executive Director Don Meikle says it should help kids avoid violent predators who've evolved and use technology to their advantage.
These perverts go to these chat rooms, they make the deal over the chat line, they go and pick the young person up at wherever their location is. These kids are being exploited and then dropped off at home. So they're really getting hard to reach out to where they are.
Meikle says the original app hasn't worked properly for about the last 2 years. This time, several young people who use EGAD services helped design the new features alongside the developer push interactions and thought of things adults may not have.
I think there was 8 or 9 kids that throughout this whole process of the redesign of this app, looked at such things as even colors, how important a color on your phone doesn't draw the attention of the people, that might be sitting beside you at a party or sitting beside you in a vehicle.
Kids anywhere in the province can download and use the I Am Not For Sale app, which is free to download on both Apple and Android phones. Meikle says right now in Saskatoon alone, there are 6 young teenagers selling their bodies. He hopes the app will help those kids and others and show them there are people who do care.
Prior to the old app crashing and stuff, we were getting an average of 700 to 900 hits a month. Now with this new improved app, I think it's gonna be a lot more than that.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
A recent decision by the Supreme Court of Canada gives the Beaver Lake Cree Nation the chance to ask for advance funding for their litigation against the Alberta and Canadian governments. And that decision could have a big impact. APTN's Chris Stewart has more.
The Beaver Lake Cree Nation has been fighting the Alberta and federal governments in court since 2008. They say overdevelopment on their traditional lands has hurt their way of life. Hunting and gathering have been severely impacted. Court documents show they have paid $3 million of an expected cost of $5 million, and they have no more funds to use to continue the fight. They asked the courts for advance funding to continue. The Alberta Court of Appeal denied their application. However, last Friday, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that the community should be able to spend money on pressing needs like housing, social services, and infrastructure, and still be eligible for advance funding. They have been sent back to the Alberta courts to show it cannot afford both pressing needs and litigation. Andra Azevedo is a lawyer with Eco Justice, an environmental law charity and an intervener in the case, and says the Supreme Court decision could have wide implications.
This case sets a precedent for First Nation governments who are bringing cases because the Supreme Court of Canada importantly confirmed that when courts assess whether Indigenous governments can afford to bring litigation, that courts should consider the Indigenous government's pressing needs like housing, infrastructure, social programming beyond just what has been characterized as the bare necessities of life.
Azevedo says the decision could also help individuals as well as Indigenous governments in getting advance funding in some situations.
This is also a win for anyone bringing publicly important cases more broadly, because although the court was very importantly focused on First Nation governments and how this test applies to them, by emphasizing the importance of context and the circumstances of people who are bringing publicly important cases, this helps enhance access to justice more broadly, because it means that courts should probably be looking at the context of anyone bringing a publicly important case.
Azevedo says the Supreme Court decision means that not having enough money shouldn't be a barrier for people with litigation that could affect many people.
This ruling helps those people who have been historically shut out of the justice system to continue to bring claims in the public interest, and helps recognize the importance of people who might have limited financial means to continue to bring publicly important cases that end up really benefiting everyone.
Beaver Lake Cree Nation will now argue in an Alberta court that it can't afford both pressing community needs and litigation at the same time. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
The British Columbia government has extended their wolf cull because they claim the top predator is reducing the caribou population. But as APTN's Tina House explains, leaders and advocates are saying otherwise.
On January the 15th of 2015, the BC government approved a 5-year program to cull wolves because they are blamed for killing the nearly extinct caribou. Laurie McConnell is with Pacific Wild and says the province has extended the cull for another 5 years, despite not enough evidence that it has made much of a difference in saving the caribou.
We're not limited to 5 years. They anticipate this is going to happen for decades because the plan is to restore habitat, but in the southern mountain, the deep snow caribou, that requires lichens that grow in very small remaining amounts of forest that support 150-year-old trees that carry the lichen that the caribou need. They don't have anywhere to go anymore that isn't fragmented by oil and gas seismic lines, mining permits, logging, and in the southeastern part of BC, snowmobile routes.
So far, over 1,400 wolves have been killed in what McConnell says is a barbaric practice.
They find a wolf in key caribou territory and they dart it and put a collar on it. We refer to it as a Judas collar because they follow the radio telemetry of that wolf back to its pack and then eradicate the pack from the air, which is inhumane. And it is not leading to the outcomes of caribou recovery.
Cookbee Judy Wilson of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs says they just passed a resolution calling for the immediate end to the killing of wolves.
Hunting of the wolves, the clubbing of them, and the inhumane acts are not within our keeping of our laws as Indigenous people. So there has to be a better approach, and I know there will be more consultation, but just to renew the 5-year wolf culling program that, we'll see more slaughter isn't really the answer.
The province did not respond to our request for an interview by the time this story went to air. So far, 526,000 people have signed a petition to stop the killing of wolves. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
A delegation of survivors and leadership from the Assembly of First Nations is getting ready to travel to the Vatican to meet with Pope Francis. Here's a preview of a story in the Northwest Territories about one residential school survivor who will soon be heading to Rome and what that means for him.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Mort-Jacobs reporting from Lilquay First Nation in the Northwest Territories. Coming up soon on APTN National News.
Cool. Dene National Chief Gerald Antoine, a survivor of residential school, is calling the trip to Rome a collective mission and a personal journey. We'll find out what messages he will bring to the Pope.
I feel that there is going to be an apology. However, it also has to be involved with the government, because it was just the government or the state and the church, they're both involved. Yeah.
That's coming up soon on APTN.
Welcome back. Well, it was the talk of Ottawa today and many other parts of the country. The NDP have signed an agreement to support the minority Liberals until June 2025. And in return, they've secured commitments from the government on pharmacare, dental care, and reconciliation. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
What this means is that during this uncertain time, the government can function with predictability and stability, present and implement budgets, and get things done for Canadians.
That's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talking about a newly inked deal between the Liberals and NDP. After almost 3 years of minority governments and a federal election last September, proponents say it gives the country more stability. Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller says it will allow the government to bring more focus to Indigenous priorities.
I think in the portfolio that Minister Patty Hajdu and I hold, Indigenous communities have said time and time again that sort of instability in government, expressed particularly in minorities, is a lot of concern for them in terms of long-term sustainable investments that we have to do to close economic gaps and move forward on a number of issues.
For her part, the president of the Métis National Council agrees with Miller.
I'm optimistic. The stability that it brings to Parliament really allows us to be able to move on our priorities. And I think the agreement or the priorities that were set out in the agreement on reconciliation were also very great to see. And yeah, we're optimistic about it.
The agreement contains key measures on reconciliation. Investment in Indigenous housing in 2022, a federal, provincial, territorial table for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and more supports for burial searches on the sites of former residential schools. The president of the Native Women's Association of Canada agrees the agreement is mainly positive. However, she says she would like to see more firm commitments on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
The data's been there. The research has been done from the National Inquiry. The calls for action have already been there. So let's start implementing them, taking them, and cost analyzing them, and having time frames there.
But the interim leader of the Conservative Party is calling the agreement a slap in the face to democracy and elections.
This is an NDP Liberal government, and they have the majority. 82% of voters did not vote for a Liberal NDP government, including millions of Liberal voters. These Canadians woke up this morning to the fact that they have been hoodwinked and they've been deceived by their Prime Minister.
The agreement also contains commitments to tackling climate change, paid sick days for federally regulated workers, more equitable tax system, and making elections more accessible for voters. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
To Quebec now, where the government tabled its first post-pandemic provincial budget. Our reporter Lindsay Richardson spent the day in budget lockup. She joins us now with your Need to Know.
Provincial Budget Day is a numbers game that could make anyone's head spin. It's an election year, so this is the last budget to be tabled by the CAQ government before Quebecers head to the polls in the fall. In the meantime, here's what you need to know. Starting with the good news, the unemployment rate is down and the Quebec economy is reportedly back to its pre-pandemic levels. But cost of living is at an all-time high. This year's budget totals $3.7 billion, with large sums earmarked for health care and education reform, creation of low-cost housing, and green transitions. Of that total amount, just over $34 million will go to Indigenous affairs in 2022-2023. But like in 2020, Quebec's finance minister isn't specifying how those funds can or will be used.
It's really up to the First Nation to tell us what the priorities are, and not for the finance minister to say this.
And that's just scratching the surface. The full Quebec budget was only made public about 2 hours ago, so we'll have more comment and context coming up. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Quebec City.
Thanks, Lindsay. Time for a quick break. Still to come, a story about two gals skiing in their regalia and a new version of bingo. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And our viewer Dave Menzies sent this in just a few days ago. Hopefully the last look we will see of frost on the trees. This was in Steinbach, Manitoba just last week. Since then, the weather has turned much warmer. Thanks, Dave. With the changing weather across the country, we'd like you to send us the view from your area. by emailing your pictures to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at Wednesday's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, +3 and cloudy for Halifax and Fredericton. -7 in Kuujjuaq, 8 below and sunny in Nain. +6 in Montreal, 3 with showers in Chibougamau. +4 and snow for Sault Ste. Marie, 2 above in North Bay. +2 with snow in Thunder Bay, 3 and snow in Sioux Lookout. 7 above in God's Lake, 5 for Norway House. +2 in Winnipeg, sunny and 5 for Dauphin. 8 above with the sun out in Regina, 12 and sunny skies in Saskatoon. 6 for Meadow Lake, 7 in La Ronge. Over in northern Alberta, 9 in Fort Chip with rain, 14 in Fort Mac. 16 for Edmonton, 18 in Lethbridge. Showers and 12 for Vancouver and Victoria. 8 with rain in Prince George, +4 in Dease Lake. -18 and snow in Old Crow, snow and +3 for Whitehorse. -10 in Yellowknife, 13 below in Norman Wells. -28 in Sax Harbor, 23 below for Pawlatuck. -8 with snow in Chesterfield, 27 below in Cambridge Bay. -22 in Arctic Bay, 15 below with snow in Igloolik. A video of 2 women in the United States hitting the slopes in their traditional regalia has gone viral on social media. But it's also raised the question, why aren't Indigenous and people of color often seen at ski resorts? Tamara Pimentel has that story.
It isn't a sight you often see at a ski resort. Maria Hawkins is a Chippewa Cree woman from Bozeman, Montana. She got the idea of snowboarding in her ribbon skirt from Divya Maya, who went viral skiing in her traditional sari.
I wanted to represent for all the Indigenous peoples of Montana, especially the children, because when I was a child learning how to snowboard, you don't see people that look like you. You don't see people of color out there.
Maya lives in Minneapolis but is originally from India. After connecting on social media, the women met up at the Bridger Bowl Ski Resort in Montana to sport their regalia together, bringing awareness to the lack of Black, Indigenous, and people of color on the slopes. Hawkins says it's all about the cost.
The lift passes, the rental packages for skis, I know that could range anywhere up to $100 as well. So it's really just a accessibility issue.
I know we're just out there on the slopes and wearing our, traditional outfit and trying to say that we're, representing BIPOC, but what does it actually mean? How can we make it more accessible for more people of color to just go and try out these sports and actually excel in it?
The women say there needs to be programs for people and children of color across North America that give them access to learning the sport.
Because we need to see more really badass women on the slopes and showing that it's not just like a sport for white people.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
When I was growing up, we always used to go to the Ochapowace Nation ski resort, but didn't see anybody in their regalia. A Mi'kmaq woman who loves using her dabber designed a Mi'kmaq bingo game to teach her language. It's part of her cultural teaching shared in a teepee, and as Angel Moore explains, she does it from the comfort of her backyard.
Gobit, the beaver. So if you have a beaver, there's a little picture of the beaver.
This is not your usual bingo game. The numbers are Mi'kmaq words, and it is held inside a 30-foot tall teepee. Marie Crisco of the Pambano First Nation in New Brunswick designed the interactive game to help people learn the Mi'kmaq language, one word at a time.
Bingo is part of our culture. Who doesn't play bingo in any First Nations community?
Crisco made 50 bingo cards, each with images of the Mi'kmaq culture, calls out the words in English and Mi'kmaq, and then she explains the cultural significance.
So once they get a line or 4 corners, they yell taho. They don't yell bingo. And then the person that won the bingo game, usually the youth,
that I played with, they have to repeat what they won.
The winner repeats the winning words in Mi'kmaq. Gracie Obi, 14 years old, Crisco's granddaughter, learns Mi'kmaq to revive her culture.
My ancestors had it before, and then it got taken away, and I want to get that back.
Crisco shares other cultural teachings and her 30-foot-tall teepee. Alicia Peter Paul, 14 years old, learned how to make a medicine pouch and loves the teepee.
I find it's really nice, really, really cool, and I kind of want one too.
Crisco was inspired to build the teepee after a sweat and fasting. It went up a few years ago in her backyard. It is also a place of healing and ceremonies. Brandy Stonovich is president of the Indigenous Women of the Wabanaki Territories and a community member of the Woodstock First Nation, also in New Brunswick. She visited the teepee once before.
We're shaping our future by doing this. So this is very, extremely important. I can't stress that enough. This is how you give back. This is how you get back what we lost, doing what Marie's doing here today.
For Crisco, cultural teachings and the teepee connect her to the spirits of the past.
So it's the ancestors that are guiding me. So I listen to that message and it almost makes me emotional because the ancestors are here in this teepee.
Angel Moore, APTN National News, Pambano First Nation, New Brunswick.
Absolutely awesome work, Marie. Hope you get some funding to keep that going and expand. The last few years have been a tumultuous time in Métis politics. Infighting at the Métis National Council has seen the Métis Nation of Ontario at one point put on probation. The Manitoba Métis Federation leave the Métis National Council, and a number of lawsuits. MNO President Margaret Froh joins us on Face to Face tonight to discuss it all, including concerns that MNO is the gateway to a so-called Eastern invasion of people claiming they are Métis.
We have long served as that eastern wall protecting against those in Quebec or into the Maritimes claiming Métis identity. But you're correct, we are seeing this more and more. And I think it's incredibly harmful when people falsely claim Indigenous identity. It's harmful certainly to the Métis, to our governments, to the work that we've been doing to assert rights and to build awareness around our history, our culture, our identity.
You can catch our entire interview with MNO President Froh on Face to Face in less than 2 minutes' time. And be sure to tune in right here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time as Daryl Stranger puts sports in focus. That's all the time we have for your news for this Tuesday. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Moore. Thanks for joining us. Stick around. Face to Face is next. Have a great night.